Okay, right. Yeah, feel free to type in your comments as we speak, but I'll move on to this. So, coming to ethics, all of us have faced ethical dilemmas when we are doing research, right? And there are certain basic rules of thumb that one needs to keep in mind. And I'm just going to run through them. A lot of it has already been covered in our discussion. And if there is something specific, like a dilemma that you're struggling with, or in your experience, you've come across a particularly difficult issue, then we can kind of go into more detail with that. So the basic things are, of course, you need to, there is something called as informed consent. Um, a lot of publications, a lot of journals ask if your study has had an ethics approval. So has your study been approved by an ethics committee of, say, your institution or university or whatever it is, an independent body? And that almost becomes like a factor in deciding whether they can publish that piece of work or not, whether you followed the proper ethical guidelines when you did the study, while you collected the data, analyzed it, stuff like that. So consent is very important. I can't stress enough on this. Respect, humility, these are basic kind of traits that you need to have to do any kind of anthropological work. Like Ranjani mentioned, confidentiality, assuring them that the information that they share with you is going to be confidential. Now, it's possible that they will give you, like in our field site, it is possible that we are studying illegal wildlife trade, and the wildlife department wants that information because they want to know, they want to identify people who are engaged in this trade. So what do you do? So just think about that and we'll come back to it. So confidentiality of the data that you collect is very important, even if it goes against your conservation principles. It's very important to assure them that you are going to be neutral and respectful of their confidentiality. And it's very, very important to clarify the goals and the outcomes of your project right at the outset. That is one way to seek consent, like you explain it to them. uh, Sometimes it's very hard to give them too much academic or technical information because they might not fully understand it. In that case, you simplify it, break it down, give some sort of an analogy which they can understand and appreciate, and be very careful about what you're promising them and what the outcome of this project is going to be. Is it just going to be research? Is it going to result in policy change? Is it going to result in some kind of a conservation action or some kind of change in their well-being or whatever it is? Don't overpromise. Very important. Asking non-leading questions, we've covered that. Like I said, interviewer fatigue is very important to know when to stop. You might need to come back if it's a very long interview, and if it's an unstructured interview, you might need to do it over a couple of days. You might not want to do it at the same day, because then towards the end people lose motivation. Or you might want to take breaks and talk about things that interest them, that spark their interest or passion or whatever it is. Or just have a cup of tea and don't start talking immediately. Just talk about your life. Have lots of informal interactions, give them an opportunity to know about who you are, why you are here, why you do what you do. All those kind of things are very important to give them the satisfaction of also asking you questions. You can always end interviews by telling them, is there something you'd like to ask us? That's a nice way to do it, but you can also sprinkle it in during the interview itself, that okay, this happened to me or that happened to me on la la la. So you have to figure out what works depending on that particular moment with that individual and their body language. um, all this sort of ensures that the responses are authentic to the extent possible. um, uh, and it's possible that you might still, people might still lie, but what you can only do is minimize that to, again, try not to ask questions that are too personal and too direct if it's something that they are not comfortable speaking. So to ensure authenticity, these kind of steps are important to take, and you can't miss them. You can't, even if you've been in the community for a while, you can't just go and sit with a pen and paper, though it might be easier to do that. You need to invest time in getting to know them. uh, there is something called the order effect, which is what Nilofer explained. The order of questions matters. So what question you ask before? So if I ask about what is the economic loss that you experienced from livestock last year, how many livestock did you lose to snow leopards? If that's the question, which I follow up with, agree or disagree with the statement, snow leopards are, I don't like snow leopards, or I don't think snow leopards should, uh, be found where I live, then it's you're leading them onto a biased response, because they are the previous question would be about a loss, and then they're thinking about the loss, and then you ask them an attitude question. So the order of questions is extremely important. There's also something called as the audience effect, which is essentially when you are interviewing, and you would have seen it, if there's a group of people, and people might respond uh, to elicit a certain reaction from the people who are listening to them. It also happens that if there is a woman who is being interviewed, and often in a lot of places women are very shy and reticent to open up, and they might not be comfortable talking if there is a male member who is kind of domineering. So they might not give you proper responses, or they might let him speak, or they might agree with what he is saying. So it's very important to be mindful of who is around them. Is it possible to isolate them in some sense, take them away from the group, and do a one-on-one if that's necessary? This is with individual level interviews, but you're doing focus group interviews, and then that could be with a group of people, and then all of them might it might be taken over by just one person who just wants to say the most dramatic thing. So you should be able to navigate these troughs. And a lot of times, like even in our interviews, it has happened that people start talking about political ideologies, and that really results in a lot of friction between different groups. A lot of it is about caste, gender, religion, and things like that. And even if you believe in a particular ideology, it's important that you don't articulate it while the interview is going on. You can have an informal discussion at the end of the interview, and that can be a separate thing. But when you're doing you're actually collecting data, try not to talk about things that are not directly related, or don't react to them that way. uh, Try to be as neutral as possible. Picking right interviewer is important. By that I mean not just you, but if you have a translator, or a community representative, or an assistant to help you do these interviews, it's important that you pick the right person, train the person through pilots and stuff, so that they are on the same page. And what you need to do, what you need to look out for when you're picking interviewers is that the person doesn't result in biased responses. Their responses don't result in biased responses, or some sort of leading responses, or priming and things like that. um, that's a concern often that we encounter. uh, you should also try to have an interviewer that has the least amount of bias associated with them. Again, this is a very hard thing. It's not set in stone, because it's possible that you may be comfortable with a female field assistant as a woman, but the men in the community might not want to talk to a female field assistant who is translating for you. So then what do you do? So these are things you need to be careful and mindful of, and find a way around. And then, like I said, allow the respondents to ask you questions as well. Now, there's a last final point, which is, after a long interview, they've given you their time, and it has come at the cost of doing a particular thing. Maybe it could be, they've set aside their farming, they've set aside time from some busy activity, and, are entertaining you and humoring you. So, do you pay them? Should you gift them something as a token of your gratitude? Should you help them, like can you do an interview on the go while, like, say they're harvesting something? Can you help them with the harvest while they're being interviewed? Are these options that you can consider? This is something to keep in mind. And often that has happened to us a lot, where people make very unrelated requests. I think this was covered in the partners principle as well, right? So if somebody, so like one time, these group of women requested us to give them money for a particular pilgrimage that they were embarking on. Now they are doing you a favor by, entertaining you and allowing you to be there. They're feeding you, they're, answering all your questions and long interviews. And if they are asking you something in return, how would you react? Like, would you entertain that request? Would you not entertain that request? How would you politely decline it? It is going to happen in field sites. I'm sure you all have experiences as well. And finally, one thing to consider is, do you go back to the community to share the results with them, to follow up with certain members if they've shown interest, to kind of keep that relationship alive? Or are we making a very utilitarian kind of a relationship where after the interview is done, like there is no contact? So these are just some of the very broad themes that you need to consider, that go into the ethics of doing any kind of research. Now we have some time, thankfully. We have about 15 minutes. And so if you have any particular experiences or concerns, it'd be lovely to hear from you as well. So please go ahead.
Maybe you could also share with us some of the ethical dilemmas you might have faced in field,
Yeah.
while, or maybe you can even discuss that point of payment. Like, do you pay interviews for their time, things like that?
Yeah.
Can I share something?
Yes, of course.
Yeah, with regards to ethics, I wanted to share an experience. So, very recently, I mean, now we are focusing on getting some information from the volunteers who actually participated um, in a wildlife conservation program in a national park, specific national park in Iran. But it actually, this program has been implemented for 3 years in this protected area, but we actually hadn't asked the participants that we need to consider their perceptions or attitudes towards this program afterwards. But now we are planning to ask some questions from them and get some information. So I was wondering, how could it be? I mean, we got some contacts like emails or phone numbers from them. So do you think would it appropriate to contact them with regards to get this information or share the questionnaire with them and say that if they are interested in participating in this questionnaire or interview, or is it like abusing their contacts or whatever? Because I was wondering if we can if we get those contacts information without their permission to use them to share the questionnaire, that wouldn't be really ethical. But at the same time, we really need to get those information. So I was wondering, how could it be, or what would be the ethical issues around that?
Would anyone like to respond to that? I'll give you a few minutes to think about it, and if not, I can say something as well.
Yeah, that would be great. Thank you.
So basically, you have a bunch of volunteers. Sorry, who was that?
That was me, Saloni. Just go ahead.
Okay.
Sorry to stop. Yeah, go ahead, please.
So you have a bunch of volunteers who came for a survey. Is that right?
They actually came to participate
Okay.
in a wildlife conservation program
All
in a
right.
protected
All right.
area.
But you did not take their numbers at the time, and you got it post hoc.
Got some information, but it was really informal. It was based
Okay.
on being friends of friends, and we know who
Okay.
are they, but we didn't ask them to get permission for receiving their contacts, to be in touch with them, for getting more information after the program. They are
Okay.
not aware of these things. Yeah.
Okay. Okay. So what do you guys think? How would you deal with something like that? Would you request them since they are friends, or like, friends of friends? Is it okay to, ask them for permission and then send them the interview? What do you guys think? What are the things that go into a decision like this? Is it important to get that information?
Yeah, it really helps us to evaluate the impact of that program on the perceptions of participants. So we really want to consider how these kind of participatory approaches helps even public to get to know more about wildlife conservation and its challenges rather than the human resources of protected areas. So we really need to consider that, but we actually didn't think about that before doing this
Mhm.
program. So
Okay,
any
so there
insights
is
on that?
have they shared their email address or any kind of contact information with you?
Yeah, they shared some like contact information, but they didn't share that for this specific purpose. They were
Okay,
just thinking, okay, they're sharing some
okay,
contact, but they didn't know what would be the purpose because we just
okay,
thought about that.
okay. So I think the way I'd go about it is if they have consented to sharing that email address with you, then it might not be a bad idea to drop them an email and ask them if they are okay if you follow up with them with a few requests. At least that's what I think, and people are free to disagree with me if they want
Huh?
to. Lofer, you there?
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah, okay.
that's a
I thought you
great.
said something.
Yeah, no. I was just listening to you.
Okay.
That's actually
So
great.
yeah, phone numbers. I mean, if they have not consented or they've not shared them directly with you, then I would not try to dig out their phone numbers.
Uh-huh.
If within the group there are some people who are very close to you, who are like your friends, first connection, you could request them for, like, whether you can ask them more questions about perceptions and stuff like that. But if you've had to go, looking around for numbers, I think it's better you email people and perhaps ask them if they're okay to be contacted. If not, they can choose to unsubscribe or ask you to remove their email address.
Okay, yeah, I see. That's
At
great.
least that's what I think. Ranjini might have a
Yeah.
different point of view. I don't know. Ranj, you want to say something?
No, I agree, Sal. I
Okay.
think Iftika has an interesting thing
Yeah.
also.
Yeah. So
Oh,
I was just
yeah,
coming to that. Thanks, Nilofer. That was a nice point that you brought. How
yeah.
much is gift money for interview justified? Can you please shed some light on this? Okay. So what? How much? How much? Yeah. I don't know. What do you guys think? How
I
would you
think
go about it?
the issue.
Sorry.
I think it's a really tricky issue when it comes to get information with actually proposing some gifts or incentives or whatever. I
Mm-hmm.
really don't know. It's really tricky. This is what I'm actually really confused about that as well. That's a really great point Iftikhar raised. Uh,
Yeah. So I remember this one time we were interviewing a folk artist, and the thing is, these folk artists make a lot of money because they do interviews for radio channels and other, researchers from, generally the West, who pay them really well. And so when you go in, there is that built-in expectation because of how they've been treated in the past, that you will either make them payment or uh, give them more than what you can actually offer. And in those cases, I felt it was a bit pointless to give money because you wouldn't know, you will not be able to, how shall we say, uh, what is the worth of that person's time is not something you can decide, I feel. um, so it's money is a bit tricky unless you've mentioned it right at the outset that we are interviewing a lot of all these volunteer interviews do that, like we are paying you $5 for this particular interview. That when you set it at the outset, that's different. But then at the end of the interview, if you suddenly give them money, one, what it does is it reduces the complex interaction that you've had to just monetary terms, and sometimes that can be perceived as an insult, people might find it offensive because they are there because they thought they had a connection with you, or they want to want to be hospitable and things like that. So just giving money might not be a good idea, I feel. Gift could be something that's kind of relevant to them, but it's not going to be a huge impact on your budget. um, Aliana says money could make it a transaction versus an interaction. Yes, exactly what I'm saying. So gift could be so this one time we were with a nomadic community, and a lot of these people tend to feel very somehow inferior to you because you're from the city and you're more urban and educated and things like that. And they often have this inferiority complex, and like this lady once said to me, oh, I'm like really dirty, and you know you're so clean, and you've come into our little hut and it's so dirty, and like she's feeling really uncomfortable about that fact. And the gifts that we had carried were something which we thought was socially like relevant and acceptable, which was things that they will use, like soap, and like a bathing soap, and a like a utensil dishwashing soap, and things like that. But after she said that, I found it really hard to give her that, because it will almost kind of confirm her belief that somehow she is superior and dirty or filthy compared to me, and then I offer her soap. That will be completely inappropriate. So yeah, I mean, just think about what we can gift, how much. Also, there is a budget constraint always, so how much we can give is really also depends on how much we have. Iftikhar says, that's true, Aliana, but irony is that I have myself participated in various reputed surveys that give money and gifts. How much is that reliable? Yeah, that's true, because then people might also give you answers that you are expecting or that you want if you're paying them. That is a possibility. Are there any other kind of dilemmas that you guys have had in the field? Research dilemmas about, say, confidentiality, or I don't know, something else?
So sometimes, Sal, one of the issues I face is often people don't understand like this thing of informed consent, because we always assume it's informed consent, but sometimes it's very hard to actually break down the question, break down, what we're trying to do. So I
Yeah,
struggle with that quite a lot. Like,
yeah,
what
me
are,
too. Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah, that is true, because again, it depends on what method you're using to record. So if you tell them, if it's a verbal consent versus a signed form, that is something that you really need to think about. Whether you're just asking them for a verbal consent, are you making them sign something? Because then they are going to be very hesitant. Uh, are you going to record their responses on a form? Are you going to audio record, video record their responses? Those kind of things are very important to think about from the community's perspective, because all that will affect their consent. Like, they might be okay with you recording on a paper but not audio recording, because then that's kind of an evidence, especially if it's things like illegal activities or behaviors. So you have to be very careful of how you're going to record, how you're going to ask for consent and things like that. uh, Gifts are hard because they might appear to come from a condescending place, says Aliana. Gulam says, if you start to pay gift or money, then sometimes it will change the habits. Yes, absolutely, that is a possibility. um, or attitudes, and make difficulties for other researchers. Yes, that is absolutely a problem. Coming to that point, now, interviewer fatigue that we spoke about, it could be a result of your interview and the length of your interview, but it could also be if that area has been over researched or over studied or over surveyed. Because then what happens is, every new researcher that comes in bears the baggage of all the previous researchers that have come in. So that is also something you need to think about when you're carrying out an interview. Is it an area that has been sampled too much and too well, and are there other areas that you could focus on, or other communities that you could focus on, and things like that are also very important to keep in mind. So we have 3 minutes. Any wrap up, like last parting words, anything that you'd like to add, any feedback that you'd like to give?
Well, one of the things I thought would be interesting to a little bit discuss was, the form of recording the interview as well and how that can change, because especially if you're doing sensitive data, like if you're looking at hunting or if you're looking at conflict, recording might be really difficult to do because people
Yeah,
might not. And we know cases where sometimes, people record it without consent, and
permission. Yeah.
that's really, really
Yes.
problematic.
Yes, very much. Never record anything without consent. If they say I'm not comfortable, just drop it. Jennifer says, I think the partner's principles are really valuable to consider. I often think about areas that are over researched or many researchers that are coming in over many years. How does that make the communities feel? How do we make sure they don't feel like experiment? Yeah, absolutely. That's very true. Because and this is something I also realized when I came across an anthropologist who was studying conservationists, and I somehow felt offended because he had somehow reduced the complexity of conservation arguments into boxes and categories, and I felt that was unfair, and because I was being looked at, um, and the gaze was turned back on me. So that is also something to remember, that when you're studying communities, you're thinking of them as subjects, they can sense that, and that might not be a very comfortable feeling. Uh, so yeah, that's a very important point, Jen. Thank you. Have we run out of things to say? If so, we can wrap up. Ranj, would you like to tell them what the next session is about?
Yeah, so for the next session, we were thinking of looking at analysis a little bit. So this is the idea that we had. It's a couple of ideas. One is we thought, so quantitative analysis. So like we've been talking throughout the course, there's both quantitative and qualitative data, right? And quantitative data, a lot of the analysis is very similar to the analysis that you've been doing before, right? With ecological analysis, it's very similar. You can have stratifications, you can have samples, you can do ANOVAs. But we were thinking, so since it's already been covered by some of the sessions, we were thinking that for the next session, we'd like to focus on qualitative data analysis with specifically looking at questionnaires, or even like semi-structured and unstructured um, interviews where you have like a whole bunch of data where people would have just told you a story, and you would have had to look across stories. So we thought we'd like to look at that by looking at coding, and we can even you do it using a software. So that was one thing that we were thinking we'd like to focus on. And if there's some time, we thought if you had questions, because I think in some of the in the entries when people had written in, they were saying that they'd like to apply this for their research, they'd like to apply this in particular situations. So if you could write to us, perhaps, if you want to discuss your research question, if you want help with finalizing your research question, looking at the methodology, maybe even like looking at the questionnaire, we're also happy to do that, right? So maybe we can do data analysis for like an hour, and the next 1 hour, if people send in questions, we can look at finalizing, like basically look at helping tighten those questions, if you need help. So that's the idea we had.
Yeah.
So qualitative data analysis with a specific focus on coding and grounded theory, and help with questions if you need. And if we can't cover it, supposing there are a lot of questions that come in and we can't cover it, we'll try getting to it after the course. We can help you individually later.
Yeah. Great. If you have any further feedback or comments, just email us, feel free. Anything that you need to brainstorm upon, need help with, need inputs on, just let us know, and we can try to fit in all of that in this final session. And yeah, that's it from us. Thank you so much.